A lot of speculation what's going to happen at the top of the NFL draft. Thank God for our friends at DraftKings who are trying to give you a little bit of a sneak peek. Because what they're telling you is that Bryce Young is the favorite to go number 1 overall, a minus 130. Now, for you novices out there, let me walk you through that. Means you got to bet $130 to win $100. So he's the favorite. Followed by C.J. Stroud at plus 175. And then Will Anderson and Jalen Carter are behind him, behind those two guys at plus 650.
But people are saying Jalen Carter is the best player in the draft this year, right?
Brady's told me that a little while ago.
You said that, Q?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best overall prospect.
He's the best overall prospect.
And so with the Chicago Bears picking at 1, the conversation then becomes, well, how is Bryce Young the favorite to go number 1 overall if the Bears are picking at 1 and we haven't heard of a potential trade or anything yet, which just makes you wonder, are the Chicago Bears eventually going to opt out of that spot to try and add a bunch of picks and move down the draft because they need a lot of help on that roster?
Can I ask a question? If you drafted Bryce Young number 1, could you immediately, like how they do in basketball, could you immediately send him in a package to another team to get like players back in return?
Yeah, I mean that's what happened essentially with Eli Manning.
Yeah.
I thought that's what happened with Eli Manning.
Yeah.
I thought that's what I mean, the way it happened, it seemed a little bit more of a hostile takeover by the Peyton
remember when
family.
Eli went up there on the
family.
stage? He looked so unhappy.
Oh yeah, he took that Chargers hat.
Well, one-time San Diego Charger, Eli Manning.
He took that Chargers hat. I'm because you don't really hear about it being done that way. Like it's kind of commonplace for basketball.
Because if you were, unless you're a Manning, it's hard to not look bad doing it. You know.
But what if the team did it? Like, what if the team was like, you know what? This is too good to be true. We have the number 1 pick. We're not going to trade out of it. We're going to get a blockbuster trade by taking Bryce Young and then trading him.
You'd lose value.
You lose value because every team knows that if you don't need him, you take him. You've already missed that window for maximizing that deal. Like teams would be like, okay, well go into the season with Bryce Young and Justin Fields on the roster. Go deal with that.
Because we're going to get one of them anyway.
Well, eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay.
I think this is going to come down to a trade, and I just wonder how far down are we looking at a potential move? Is it going to be? Does Houston say we'll take whoever? If it's not going to be, if it's Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, we'll take whoever's left at number 2.
What did they give up when they moved up to take Trubisky? I mean, remember when John Lynch fleeced them to make them think they were going to take him?
They moved up from 3 to 2. I forget the compensation, but it
was at least like a 3rd-round pick and like a 5th-round pick. It was pretty substantial in regards to like pick value.
And I remember hearing the story because I think Peter King was in the war room with the Niners at the time that it happened, and they were shocked. They're like, wait, the Bears one? And they couldn't figure out who are they like there that does. And then somebody threw out, well, that's got to be for a quarterback. It's got to be for a quarterback. And then when they took Trubisky, everybody was just completely just shocked and appalled by the move the Bears made. But Houston, just how could they? How could they do that?
I think the interesting part of it was they were going to take the 49ers. They were going to take Solomon Thomas regardless.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like he's turned things around with his career, but he wasn't what initially I think they were hoping he'd be as the number 2 or 3 player overall in the draft. So
yeah, and then I think it was Jamal Adams who went shortly after that. He was part of that draft as well too.
Yep.
So this does feel though that it's going to be Houston, Indianapolis potentially is going to want to move up to take Bryce Young. I just wonder how teams view the difference between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, how big of a drop-off that is. Or there was also a report that came out that the Colts really want to move up because they love Will Levis.
Yeah.
That's the guy that they've pinpointed. So that was another one of the other reports that came out from the quarterback standpoint. So.
Which, as far as the betting odds, right, what do they have Bryce Young at for going number 1 overall?
Minus 130.
Oh, wow. And what do they have Levis at?
Levis is plus 750.
See, that's one, like right now, I think it makes sense to put some money on because I've been hearing the discussions about Will Levis for a while. And the only thing that should concern you is, what the games look like this year. Now, granted, he was playing behind an offensive line that really struggled. in an offensive system that this past year in Rich Scangarillo's system at Kentucky, who does have NFL roots and ties, but he hasn't really done well. He didn't do well in Denver. He didn't do well with Kentucky this past year. You'd have to go back to 2 years ago with Liam Cohen, where it seemed like Will Levis had a much better grasp of that system. Even though statistically it looks the same, his tape looked a lot better. So that's the hard thing, is you're trying to sell, and we've heard this story before. That was with Jordan Love in particular. You're trying to sell a team and a fan base on 2 years ago tape, not this past year. But I'm telling you, he's big, he's athletic, he's got a rocket for an arm. I could easily see the Colts jumping up to number 1 with Chicago and taking him. And knowing that Houston probably doesn't feel, if they know the Colts really want Will Levis, they don't feel the need to move up one spot, give up anything. And they can just take Bryce Young at number 2 overall right where they're at, if that's the guy they've identified. So I don't know how all that stuff works behind the scenes. I don't know if, LaVar, based on your experience talking to guys, like, I'm always fascinated to know how you go about getting the intel of who a team really, really wants.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, when you get closer and closer to, what the draft, a lot of times after the private workouts as well, you get an idea, if, at least from the last few guys that I've known. Like, I knew Micah, I knew where Micah was potentially heading. If one thing didn't fall into place, I knew what was going to happen with him. Same thing with Adafe. So, and that's like the more recent, I guess, deals in terms of a high-profile guy. But, I mean, I don't know how much it's changed from when, we were going in the draft, but you get an idea pretty close to the draft who they want to go after. And I think it comes down to, well, now with the slotted contracts, it's not that big of a deal, because when I was coming out, it was more so about your signability. Like, that would dictate, we want you, but we don't know if we can sign you or if you're going to be a holdout and what that's going to look like. So there's all those conversations. Those conversations don't exist anymore. So it's more or less, looking at what the team needs are. If that team that wants you is looking at you and may try to pull a Belichickian move where it's like, we're going to take a chance and move down further in the draft and hope that you're still there and get you. So there's different, there's different looks, there's different sounds, different feels to how people approach it.
How many top 10 worthy quarterback prospects are there? So Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis. Is Anthony Richardson on that list as well, too?
I think some teams could see him as that. I'm telling you right now, Mike Renner, who does a tremendous job for Pro Football Focus, he had put out he puts out some interesting threads. So if you're on Twitter, look up Mike Renner from Pro Football Focus. But he actually put out, he goes, every quarterback's longest throw in a game. And now they're not all completions. He's literally just talking about in a game how many yards they threw the ball through the air. And then he compares it to Justin Herbert and Josh Allen. And just to give you a sense of the arm talent, the arm strength, right? So he puts on a clip of Anthony Richardson, who I think he throws like 64 yards or something like that. But in that clip, like, you can see the foundation of skills that he has. He eludes a rusher. He's drops back in the pocket, gets pressure, eludes a rusher, slides to his right, sets his feet quick, and heaves the ball. And this ball, most places probably is caught for a touchdown, ends up being incomplete. But you see those sorts of splash plays, if you will, or that sort of upside ability, and you just don't see many guys with the ability to do that. He is so freakishly athletic and has such a strong arm, but also possesses these, simple little things that quarterbacks have to do, like resetting his feet in the pocket, movement to throw in and out of the pocket. You see examples of that. It's just not consistent enough. And there's times you see him have some really easy missed throws that are all over the place. And then game to game, there's some games you look at him and go, that's a top 10 pick. There's other games you watch and go, he might need to go back for another year of development. It's that drastic of a difference from game to game. So I would say he probably has some people who thinks he could be a top 10 talent, but they have to have the right situation and patience for him to take him in that spot.
The reason I ask is because you've got, and I'm looking up, by the way, the throw by, and that is pretty fascinating. Hendon Hooker actually had 66 in the air. That was one of the that Renner put out. But
look at the difference between like how Richardson could even set his feet in that throw in order to make the throw. Like he had to slide to his right. He has no momentum going up forward into the throw. He just slid it over, set his feet, and slings it. Like he could probably throw the football the furthest of anyone in this draft class.
So if you're at the top of the draft, I think we kind of know the Bears aren't taking a quarterback. Houston's taking a quarterback. Arizona's not taking a quarterback. And then you get to Indianapolis. After that, you've got Seattle and Detroit, who are sitting at 5 and 6. Look, they love what Jared Goff has done in Detroit, and Pete Carroll's come out and said, yeah, we want Geno Smith back next year. But if you've got one of these quarterback prospects sitting there, are you not entertaining the idea of taking a Levis or an Anthony Richardson, knowing that everything worked out to your favor this year? One team was a playoff team, another team was close to being a playoff team, but you've got to start having some conversations about what it's going to look like long term. Like, wouldn't those two be in the market potentially for one of these quarterbacks that you could develop with veteran guys there already?
Oh, you could tag Geno Smith, which you'd be paying him a lot of money for 1 year. But then you could draft Anthony Richardson and let him continue to grow and improve behind. Like, that would be probably an ideal scenario. And then, look, you give Geno Smith another year. Granted, he's getting up there in age, but another year to prove that he's capable of playing in this league and back-to-back years playing at a high level. And then that gives him an opportunity to go somewhere else, potentially as a veteran. Now, granted, this late in his career, he, at 33 years old next year, he's probably going to be looked at as a stopgap. But that doesn't mean he can't go start, play some games, be successful, and make some money. So I could see that scenario playing out in Seattle. I don't know with the Lions and Jared Goff. I mean, Jared Goff is how old now? Is he like 29, 30?
He's got to be older than that, right? He drafted in, 2016, was he? Like,
yes, he's like 28.
All right. So let me see. We'll look that up. I'm efforting right now.
I was going to say, is Lee going to be? He's 28 years old. Your internet's so bad.
By the way, Jared Goff, he's 28.
Yeah, thank you, Lee.
He's 28.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lee.
Hey, Berto, how old's Jared Goff?
28.
Thank you.
Okay,
We
thanks,
are able
Berto.
to confirm that there. So yeah, he's 28.
But he's still on the right side of 30, and I think with what you saw this past year, I don't think they make that move. They still have some other places, other holes where they could go get another dynamic playmaker. They could go get someone to help out their defense. There's still a lot of roster building within the Lions that make more sense at this point than taking a quarterback. Like they're not that deep that they can just forego taking a great player. I mean, why is Will Anderson sitting there?
Yeah.
Why is if you have like a big time prospect or one of the best cornerbacks? Although this year isn't a great cornerback class, but there could be some potential there to beef up the O-line. However you look at it, I don't think that's Detroit's move.